Despite his genius reputation as a technology innovator, Apple mastermind Steve Jobs never wrote a single line of programming code for any of his multitude of Apple inventions. The programming was left to Steve Wozniak, Jobs' one-time partner, and Alan Baum. While Jobs never did the programming or engineering himself, he did make the necessary alterations to the devices and monitors that made them appear more user-friendly and accessible. In an effort to demonstrate a point about making the original iPod even smaller than what was first handed to him, Jobs dropped the music player into an aquarium and pointed out the bubbles that rose to the surface from the device. Jobs told his engineers that these were air bubbles, which meant there was space in the device to cram the instruments and engineering even closer together to produce a smaller iPod. The folks at Apple have continued to take on this challenge. While the first iPod was 19.9 millimeters thin, the most recent model is 6.1 millimeters. Jobs' eccentric nature around the office didn't just affect how he approached work. He expected all of his employees to arrive on time and extra prepared for the day's obstacles. When one of his secretaries, a single mom trying to make ends meet, showed up late for work because her car wouldn't start, Jobs threw her a set of keys to a brand new Jaguar with the insistence that she should never be late for work again. Steve Jobs also made his workplaces a bit more uncomfortable. After committing to diets of only 1 or 2 fruits for weeks at a time, he believed partaking in fruitarianism, the vegan subset diet of eating only fruit, would eliminate his need for showering, so he could spend even more time mapping out and constructing new Apple products. Early employees of Jobs noticed that this diet not only forced him to have to work the night shift at Atari due to complaints about his hygiene, but his skin color even changed to a sunset hue because of his restrictive diet. Jobs' attention to detail often places the late CEO into 2 camps: an efficient, passionate leader, and someone who may have been downright insane. In 2008, Jobs called Google's senior vice president of engineering with a minor emergency, stating that the shade of the yellow O in Google was not correct and should be fixed immediately, as it did not look good on the iPhone. The issue was fixed, and it was assumed everyone was finally able to get a good sleep that night. In Apple's early days as a company, an argument broke out amidst Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs as to who should be considered the number 1 on their identification name badges. Wozniak was offered the number 1, but Jobs fought him vehemently for it, angry that he was considered number 2 for literally anything. While Wozniak ended up keeping the number 1 on his badge, Jobs accepted the digit of 0 at his insistence that it comes before the number 1. Another battle between Wozniak and Jobs proved Jobs' disloyalty to his partner over his own ego. After creating a game called Breakout for the Atari console, Wozniak and Jobs planned to split the money made from it at 50-50. When the paycheck was delivered to Jobs, he told Wozniak the company had paid them $700 total instead of the $5,000 that was originally in the contract. Wozniak went home with a 50-50 split of $350, while Jobs pocketed $4,650 for himself. Jobs' insistence that he did not need modern medical treatments may have led to his eventual downfall. After the discovery of his pancreatic cancer in 2003, Jobs ignored the advice of doctors to proceed with necessary surgeries and exams, instead subscribing to extreme vegan diets, practicing the ancient art of acupuncture, utilizing herbal remedies, and even consulting a psychic. This, however, is not a strange phenomenon among CEOs, as using psychics for business deals and transactions is fairly common. Jobs did not attempt surgery for his cancer until 9 months after first being diagnosed, a choice critics say greatly shortened his lifespan. Originally known as the Graphics Group, the company we know today as Pixar was saved by Steve Jobs on numerous occasions. Jobs purchased the company from Star Wars creator George Lucas for $10 million in 1986, and then spearheaded and oversaw production of the company's first feature film, Toy Story. Jobs also helped fine-tune the story of the movie, as it was originally written with Woody as a bad guy. When Jobs sold Pixar back to the Walt Disney Company in 2006, 2006. It came with a price tag of $7.4 billion. This deal made Steve Jobs the largest shareholder in Disney. Through all his eccentric and questionable behavior, Jobs still came from very humble beginnings. In the 2005 Stanford commencement address, Jobs claimed that throughout his brief time in college, he was homeless and without a dorm room, often opting to sleep on the floor in his friends' rooms. He obsessively collected Coke bottles for 5 cents in an effort to pay for food, and would travel 7 miles across town every Sunday in order to have one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. Just as an added bonus to this video, and although it doesn't have anything to do with Steve Jobs, we had to include this little-known fact about Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. As a teenager, Wozniak once found himself spending an evening in the local juvenile detention center after putting a ticking fake bomb in a locker at his high school. While the administration was not impressed, Wozniak's cellmates were, as the genius programmer taught them how to connect the cables from the prison's ceiling fans to the jail cell bars, shocking anyone that touched them.